Hello and welcome to 1882. That's right, we're finally back after just being lazy bastards I like to say over the Christmas period, but it's been a lot longer than that. I'm Ash. I'm going to be your judge if you want today. More agnostic on the matter, but speaking on behalf of ENICOut is my brother Chris. How you doing, bro?
How we doing, everyone? We're good.
What's up, man? And we've got a guest with us today, all the way from over the other side of the pond. It's Steve. How you doing, mate?
Good. Thanks for having me, y'all.
It's a pleasure. Whereabouts are you from over there?
I'm in Miami, Florida right now.
Nice. I bet you're feeling a lot warmer than we are.
Right now, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. It's horrendous here. Horrendous. But it's good to have you on. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into watching Spurs and sort of where your support of the club sort of stems from?
Yeah. So it's a little bit different being an American, and I'll say football, being an American football fan, because there's not the whole tribalism thing. We don't get to pick the team where we're from. It's just a different journey. It's hard to explain. It's complex. But the way that I started supporting Spurs, I would say about 9 years ago, at the beginning of 2013, the first game I had watched, and Spurs had been mentioned to me in bars as a cool team if I wanted to start getting into the EPL, as a cool team to start following. And back then, 10 to 20 years ago, it was really hard to follow EPL in America just because of the access to the continent. You had to have a satellite to watch some of the games. Nowadays, with the internet, and streaming, we can watch all of the games. So we started to have access to these games. I wanted to research for the 2014 World Cup. The first game that I watched when I started getting into the EPL was Tim Sherwood's very first game as a manager at Man U. Emmanuel Adebayor, he scored those goals, did those salutes, and I thought that was the coolest guy and all of the worlds, and I thought that they would be awesome to get behind, and it didn't quite turn out that way, but it has been really, really fun following this club over the past 9 years, despite what's going on right now.
Well, it's quite a ride, isn't it? It's easy just to follow your Manchester Cities or United or Liverpool because you know you're going to see some success. But like being able to choose a club that you know is going to take you on a bit of a roller coaster, I imagine that's a bit different to what other people might have experienced when being in a similar position to yours, when they're just sort of looking to get into clubs in EPL. But it's great to hear. I mean, it's an interesting time to start watching when Tim Sherwood takes over, and we've got the Giles being thrown at the benches and all that. But no, it's really great to have you interested in. Is there a large supporter group where you are in Miami?
In Miami, no, there's not. In fact, if anyone is from Miami and listens to this, hit me up on the Twitter. I'd love to meet some more. We have there's some bros that we watch games with around here. There's supporters clubs in a lot of major cities in America. I've been to several of them. They tend to be really cool people, way cooler than a lot of the other supporter clubs from other teams. It's another thing that I really like about Tottenham, at least as far as the American fans are concerned. I think we have the coolest fans, and the expats that come over and are part of these clubs, they seem to be the coolest expats. Maybe I'm biased, but they seem to be.
It's all right to be biased. No, we are definitely growing in America. I think the numbers online show that as well. Just before we get into the whole ENIC debate, Chris, I want to bring you in literally just a couple minutes. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but you got to talk about Villa. Bit shit, right?
Yeah, terrible, really. Nothing to really say on the matter, but listen, freaking nothing off the bench. Hill starting, Charlison out, Son might as well be out. Disappointment with Kane. I thought he could have stepped up and showed a bit of leadership with being a senior player, but ultimately he can't do it by himself. I was a bit feeling like I told you so, because I remember when we was linked with Douglas Luiz. I think he's a fantastic, very solid player. Not fantastic in what he does, but he just does everything right. He's not the biggest name, and I think he's a great player. Lucas Digne, yes, he went for a lot of money, but I always fancied him. Good crosser of the ball. And let's be honest, Eric Konsa, Tyrone Mings, they'd get in our team.
Yeah, most defenders would, though, to be fair. You touched on Sonny's downfall there. Stephen, is there anything that worried you? You sort of came into watching Spurs when Son really started to take off, and now you're trying to see his sort of downfall. Any worries for you?
About Son?
About Son specifically, yeah.
I guess it's just we see this all the time in sports. Sonny is how old right now? Like 20,
30?
20.
Yeah, 30. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're in a time where with these players, we can't take for granted that they're going to be at the 100% elite level of their abilities that they've been at the past. But he has still flashed some really good things, like that time when he had a rest for just a minute for that Leicester game, and he came in and scored a hat trick within 20 minutes. He showed that
3 amazing goals as well.
The World Cup, he wasn't as good because of the mask and the vision, and he didn't have any painkillers. He could only take Advil. But then at the very end, he had that moment, that huge moment for his country and his buddies, where he carried the ball box to box to send them out of the group stage. But the reason he was wearing that mask is because we didn't take care of business in the easiest Champions League group in all the Champions League. This is another tangible discussion, but if we had a manager, we had the most talented squad in the group. If we had wrapped that up by round 5, Sonny wouldn't have had that injury. Sonny would be better right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of what ifs to do with the whole season, to be fair, and I think that's something we might come back to later on. But let's get cracking. The whole of Tottenham Twitter and the whole biosphere around the club at the moment is sort of engaged in this whole ENIC in or out or whatever. Well, I haven't seen much in, to be fair, but certainly there's a lot of hashtags and name calling and all sorts going on online. So, Stephen, on behalf of the defence, can you give us a little bit of why you think the owners have either been good or are in the right place to take us forward? Just before you do so, though, I want to say to everyone online who's saying stupid shit like Levy lover and you're the problem, all that stuff, grow the fuck up and have a grown-up conversation.
Let's not get personal. Like,
exactly.
Twitter, like, even with the ENICOut, like, we all support the club. None of us know exactly the right way.
No.
Let's just not get personal with it.
We all get to choose how we support the club we love. So on that note, Stephen, on behalf of the defence, let's have your opening statement.
Yeah, and here's the shortest, most succinct way to put it. When I started watching this club 9 to 10 years ago, the EPL was a big 5, and now it's a big 6. And we're that 6th team, and these owners put us there. And there's more details. There's more discussion we can have. It can get more elaborate. But why are we trashing the people who brought us to this stage? Who are they like a victim of expectations that they created? I think that there's perception out there that our peer clubs, in terms of branding, market forces, financial might, and things like that, our peer clubs are Chelsea, Man City, Man U, Real, all the top ones, and that's just simply not the case. I mean, the owners of these clubs have money that, if we were to get an owner that matched it, the owner would likely be an international criminal or of people that we don't really want to be associated with. And one of the reasons I cheer for this club, and I love cheering for this club, and I feel like a lot of people do, is that there is something noble about moving up the right way, the organic way, and having local people in charge of the club. Even though I'm not a local, I still find it very admirable. And they've done a good job. And the truth is, our true peer clubs, they're the West Hams, the Evertons, the Aston Villas maybe, and we're miles clear of them now because of things that we've done in the past, at least since I've been watching, because of what these owners have done.
Yeah, Chris, any response to that? So basically, we've grown organically. We've not been reliant on our owners to fund our growth, which seems to be the way of other clubs are doing, but it's obviously not sustainable, and it's a mental way to do business if you think about it, right?
Yeah, and you say the word business, and that's the way these owners run the club, a business. And I don't know the analogy or the quote perfectly, but I am sick of being in a boat and pedaling or rowing with one fucking paddle. Like, we're just going round in circles. We've been here. We know what it's like. We bring a good manager in. We don't back them. They might get some success, and then a team might overachieve, and then we think, oh yeah, this team's good enough, so we don't need to invest, and let's just push them as far as we can, and then they all turn 32 very quickly, and they all leave, and then we're back to this rebuild. And I'm sick of hearing this long-term rebuild. Like, how long is it going to be? They said, what was it, 5 years under Poch?
Something like that, yeah.
I'm sure we've reached that 5 years. What, are we extending it? Are we doing another 5-year rebuild? What is it? Like, for me, it's very similar to a manager. And certain managers are very good at building foundations and bringing to a club a certain level, but then you need a top manager to get you over the line. And these owners, thank you for all they've done. They've built the foundations of a club that's self-sustainable, and as a business, yes. But in terms of getting us over that line,
yeah,
it's not there. It's not there.
Well, let me just come in on that. So, Stephen mentioned about growing organically and the growth we've come as a club, certainly since he started to support the club. But I'm going to go back to 2008 because that's sort of that was the last time we won a trophy, so that's everyone's sort of starting point quite a lot. I know we came in before that, but who gives a shit. So since 2008, we have finished in the top four. We finished in the top four 7 times. So that's 4 finishes in 4th place, 2 in 3rd place, and once in 2nd. We didn't finish in the top 4 in the previous 14 years. We hadn't had back-to-back top 4 finishes since the 81-82 and 82-83 seasons. We had 0 top 4 finishes in the 90s and 5 in the 80s, which was when we're probably most famous, the 80s and the 60s, and only 1 in the 70s. So there's a lot of talk about how the club, how they failed us. It seems to be a word I'm hearing a lot. The club have failed us. But you're saying that they've taken us as far as they can, Chris. I think that's fair to sum up.
They've taken us as far as they can, and ultimately top 4 is not a trophy. Like, even you want to go back to the 60s, the 70s, even the 90s, when we were apparently shit, they've still got trophies in them eras.
Yeah.
We don't have trophies now. The top 4 does mean nothing. Like, honestly, a lot of these fans would be supporting them a lot more.
Steve, is there anything you'd like to comment on that about maybe we've hit our ceiling under this owners?
Yeah. So with that notion that top 4 doesn't mean anything without trophies, I don't necessarily agree with. Nothing really means anything unless you get titles. And I think a lot of people only really consider titles to be winning the EPL or winning the Champions League. The FA Cup and the Carabao Cup, they're really nice and all, but especially during the Poach years when we focused on getting top 4, that was definitely a more important thing in terms of growing the stature of the club, growing the revenues, and most importantly, growing the attractiveness for other players to come over and play for us. Once we had this run of being in the top 4 and then making the final, our net spend since that time has been top 5 of the EPL, maybe higher. The figures I see were 5th in the past 5 years, and it started shooting up right after the Champions League final and when the stadium opened up, despite the pandemic going on. So, I mean, there's no trophies, but still the majority of clubs in the EPL, at least 15 of them or so, they would be jealous of our stature, like West Ham fans, Everton fans, those guys. And also the notion of they've taken us as far as we can, and we just need a new owner to come in and spend. That's one of those feels of be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. And Everton is a huge example of this. They spent how much, 500 million pounds since 2016.
Yeah.
And they almost got relegated. So that's another big misperception I think is out there, at least in internet lands of Spurs Twitter and all that, is that this notion of if you spend, it's definitely going to work. If you go and look at the highest dollar transfers, not just of our club, but of all the clubs over the past several seasons, half of them flop, you know? And if you spend big and you can't really afford to back it up with criminal money, basically, then it could cripple your club. And we see it happening. West Ham, they're in relegation fight technically right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, that's a good point. So you mentioned about transfers, and that's something that Daniel Levy gets bashed on specifically, about not spending enough, not backing managers, making shit signings, even though he's not a scout. So I'm not sure how much he is to blame for the players we sign. Christian, any comments on our transfers over the last 20 odd years?
Right, they're all opportunities. Like, the only one that I credit him on, right, is Ndombele, because his profile was emerging, right? That one, if it's gone wrong, and it has gone wrong, that's not to do Levy. He got the deal done, and he's brought in a top talent. Now, we talk about Lo Celso. This guy's went to PSG, flopped. This guy's been around, right? And we still buy him for big money. That's fine. Move him on. He's still on our books. We can't move him on because we overvalue players. We keep them tight. The big clubs, right, they'll happily lose 15, 20 million on a player if it takes the toxicity out of the club. Get them out, let's get someone in. But we won't do that because we're runners of business. In terms of he's not a scout, well, who employs the scouts? Does the boss not take responsibility of it? Is the youth set up? Is the scouting set up not people he's hired and trusted? It's a known fact. Paratici walked in the club and on his first day went, fuck, I can't concentrate on the first team because the youth team is fucked. And literally got rid of everyone, and he's trying to rebuild slowly, right? And the youth setup's never been right. We've got no one coming up, or even if they don't come up, we've got no one that we can sell for decent money like Chelsea do. The profiles that come in, always wrong profiles, always opportunities, signings, never the right profiles.
Would you say that's a knock-on effect of bad manager signing as well? Because a lot of clubs you'll see they hire. No, but hear me out. A lot of clubs hire managers who follow along a similar path. So, for example, Chelsea just sacked Tuchel and they brought in Potter, who isn't worlds away from Tuchel. The changes you've seen from the Chelsea team recently, although not 100% successful, are tweaks here and there. They play generally a similar system and a similar style. Leicester have done it for years. Again, it's going a bit shit now, so I'm talking myself into a bit of a hole here. But Tottenham don't seem to have done that. So we've gone from Poch to Jose, which are worlds apart. You can't get two more diametrically opposed managers than those two. And then we had Nuno, who was just a space filler, but I suppose he was supposed to be a Conte light, but again didn't work because he wanted to play four at the back, which is why we brought in Emerson Royale, who's now having to play wing back under Conte. So is that enough? Something else that you'd bash the ownership for, like not having an identity is where I'm getting at.
No, but the non-identity is them because they've never fully backed the manager.
Yeah.
And Harry Redknapp was one of the managers that they never backed. They never backed Mourinho, right? They've never backed anyone fully, not even Poch, right? And at the beginning of his era, they backed Poch quite a bit. Poch then started asking for certain players. They wouldn't give in to him. What I would say, though, is they offered Poch similar players and he refused. So he was part of the problem, but that's a whole other matter. But for me, it goes back to being opportunity, like Van der Vaart signings. Modric, we was lucky to get him before the World Cup. After the World Cup, we would have got nowhere fucking near him.
Phenomenal player.
For me, we just don't have, not a vision of how we want to play. We don't have a vision in terms of, right, we're going to back this manager. If it doesn't work, this is, at least we've got X, Y, and Z to move forward with. Because Mourinho's very similar to Conte in his style of football. Nuno, you say, well, that PE teacher don't really count, but there's just so much that's wrong within the actual club rather than just the first team. It is rotten, and unfortunately, when that much is wrong, you have to blame the owners. Like, who, at the end of the day, they make the decisions, they hire people. If your boss does not give you the right tools to do your job, how can he possibly blame you for not completing the tasks?
Stephen, obviously, we've spoken there about identity and transfers not quite matching up with playing style, etc. Is that an issue with you at the moment? I don't know if Parachi has only been in the job for a little while. I don't know if that swings it. I don't know if you want to give him some time, or what's your feeling about the current feel around the club and the perceived lack of identity?
I like the Paratici stuff. He's always seemed very interesting and enigmatic since he came in, and like you said, Christian, he came in, said fuck, and did a huge do-over with the youth program, and it sounds like exactly what we need, and I'm happy we hired him. And who hired him? The people that we went to push out. I think what's going on now, it's you said that we didn't back Mourinho, and that's interesting you say that, and I appreciate that, because one thing that I've been confused about over on this side of the pond is that I hear like pre-threats all the time coming up into this January transfer window of you better back Conte or he's going to leave and we're going to revolt. We're going to burn the stadium down, have a rebellion. You better back Conte. But where was this energy when Mourinho was here? I mean, Mourinho, he in terms of, you talk about Conte's reputation and the trophies he's won and the things he's accomplished. Mourinho is twice as accomplished as him. Where was that energy? So that kind of confuses me a bit. This whole pitchfork mob, the conflicting viewpoints that I get from them really confuse me. In terms of like overall success with the ENICOut, you say they're failing, but it wasn't that long ago that we were in the Champions League final, and we were doing it with a very innovative setup in our structure. We were doing it in ways that other clubs, they might have tried, but they've never come close to achieving. And it made a lot of people jealous, both the rich clubs and the poor clubs. I think it's the reason that we seem to be the most hated club in all of the EPL. Yeah. The rich teams, their fans sing about us all the time. The poor teams, their fans sing about us all the time. If we're not doing anything spectacular, if we're like not really a threat to anybody, why are we getting all this hate? That doesn't make sense to me either. I think we really are underappreciating the things that we've gotten right, at least in the past 10 years. I wasn't around before that, unfortunately, but at least in the past 10 years, I think we underappreciate a lot of the things that we've gotten right.
Yeah, it was only shit before that. Don't worry, you didn't miss out on much. Christian, Champions League final, that was impressive though, right?
Again, overachieved. That's something that, when that's like us, like Leicester winning the league. No one expected it. It was overachieving. Part of it was by luck, which you do need in football, so I'm not going to hold it against them. However, we have to factor that in. Lucas should have never been in the Champions League final. Llorente, at his big age, should never have been in the final. Winks should have never been in the final. Eric Dyer should have never been in the final. Like, we had an overachieving team. Yes, individually great players when you speak about Toby, Eriksson, Dembele, Jan Vertonghen, and all these players, yes. However, as a team, and as a club, it was an overachievement. And that should have been, another point is, that should have been the point where everyone in the club got hungry. The fans definitely got hungry. We wanted to be there again. Like, we, as a fan base, we was upset that we lost that final, but the feeling was, how good was it that we got there? We didn't slag anyone off, and what happened is they got to the final. So Levy said, right, we're going to invest a little bit, but ultimately go and do it again. There was nothing, there was no real push on, there was no real desire from the club. There was no mentality change. But like people say, yes, he spent money, right? But who did he buy after the Champions League? Endel Mele, yes, I've already said that was a good signing. We signed Lo Celso. We signed Steven Sessegnon.
It was a good signing at the time. Like, we talk about how he's not maybe performing now, but let's be honest, the whole of the country wanted to sign Steven Sessegnon when we signed.
Right, but that's because of Championship. Let's be honest. Like, if everyone wanted him, we would have gone City. But Steven Sessegnon, Jack Clark,
yeah, that was it.
These are not Champions League final players. Like, whether you say Steven Sessegnon was playing well, but
you talk about
that's not investment in terms of, yes, you pulled money out your pocket, but it's bad investment.
Sorry, Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So we've invested more since then than we ever have, as was promised by the owners too, having to do with both reaching the final and to getting that stadium opened up. We've invested more on players. Maybe they flopped, but that happens. Once again, spending money does not automatically equate to getting better. That's a big myth. But yeah, we spent on the players, but we've also spent more on coaching and management than any other owner has. We've signed 2 managers since then, which at the time they were signed were unanimously considered the most accomplished managers out there at the time.
Yeah, and Christian, you spoke about overachieving. You spoke about the final was an overachievement, but surely the size of a club that Tottenham are, we would have to overachieve every time we win something. The reason I say that is since 2008, there's been 42 trophies up for grabs, domestic trophies up for grabs. 78% have been won by Manchester City, Manchester United, Chelsea and Liverpool. That's 78% of domestic trophies won by just 4 clubs. One of those is a plaything for a nation and it's being used as a sports washing project. We're never going to compete with that. 2 of the others are 2 of the biggest clubs in the world in terms of marketing and fan base in United and Liverpool. And another one was a Russian mafia boss's plaything as well, because he was an oil baron. So you can see it's difficult to struggle. And just another thing, just before you come in there, Chris, in that time period, only 2 clubs have won more than 1 trophy. Arsenal with 4 and Leicester with 2. The other clubs that have won something are like Birmingham, Swansea and Wigan.
Yeah, no, I get that point. But it's when Liverpool won the league, right? Did you say they overachieved?
No. It was the season after they'd got 90 odd points. So
exactly. It's about building something. Since that Champions League final, we've got no closer to City, no closer to even Chelsea. I know they've dropped off in form and signed their manager, so that's got to implement it. But in terms of club stature, we've got no closer. So had we, like I said at the start of the season, right, it's about improvement. It's about steady improvement constantly. If we got an FA Cup or a Carabao Cup and we finished in the league within 10 points of the winner, that's improvement. We've scaled back a 10 point gap. Like, we were 20 points behind. So then next year you go again, you're 5 points closer. And that's how Liverpool did it. Liverpool didn't overachieve because you could see them pushing them the whole way every season in, season out. It's not about finishing 4th. If you finish 4th within 5 points, you got to put your hands up and say, fuck me, that was a good season. Right? We're not getting any closer. Argument is we're getting further away. There's no real fight, and that's the problem. It's not overachieving is if you do less than you win the league once and then you're back to ground zero.
Stephen, Christian mentioned there lack of fire. Is that something that you've seen or something that worries you?
Lack of fire, like in the past couple weeks? Absolutely. In the past year? No. Really, I mean, Conte, you say what you want about him. I'm not necessarily his biggest fan, as y'all might surmise, but one thing he definitely does have is fire. The same thing with Mourinho. They're trying to bring in guys with fire. And it ebbs and flows. And when we're in a downturn like we are now, where we're not performing well, I hear everyone say that they hate watching the club now. They don't have, there's no more soul left. They don't like watching it. But over the course of the past year, I would definitely disagree with that. That Arsenal game, we won 3-0. We won 3-0 to essentially take top four. That was some of the most fun I've had watching this club, and all my time watching it. That was pretty recent. Like we're not as far away as I think people think we are.
Okay, so just before we move on to a closing statements, if you will, I think it's fair if I summarise Stephen's points there as we have grown organically almost more than any other club of our stature, and we are facing a really difficult challenge in terms of, you look at the ownership structures of other clubs and where they get their money from. It's hard to compete, and even having said that, spending money doesn't necessarily equal trophies necessarily straight away. It's a lot more into it than that, but I think it's fair to say that, and obviously you want to see football that you can enjoy, so this nitpicking at sort of the FA Cup and the Carling Cup isn't necessarily going to do it for you. You want to see Tottenham at the top level, rather than just a trophy for a trophy's sake. I think that's fair, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And Christian, you're sort of saying, I think, what a lot of fans online are saying. Obviously, the lack of trophies is a big thing. I know Stephen, I'm not sure if the same feeling around the FA Cup might be felt for fans abroad, but in England it is also diminishing. But ultimately, it's the oldest cup competition in the world, so it does have some sort of pulling power. So we do still want to win trophies. A lot of managers would say that trophies breed trophies and success breeds success. But ultimately, we haven't won anything, and we haven't backed managers, and we've started to stagnate. Is that fair, Chris?
Yeah, just give me a second paddle so I can keep paddling forward, man.
Right, all right. So we went with Stephen first last time on the opening statement. So Christian, you go first on closing. What do you, if you could speak to the owners now, what would you say?
I'd just say to them, look, you have got one of the best managers in world football, the closest thing in terms of success that you're going to get to a Mourinho, a Pep or a Klopp. Back him like you've never backed anyone else. Trust him, and he will take you there. I don't care how old you think De Vrij is, or how old you think anyone that he signs is. By the way, he's not all about that fan base. Let's just put it out there. But just get them in, and let's at least back the guys. And if it doesn't happen, then we can hold our hands up. At least we tried. We can't keep planning for the future. It's about the here and now. Ultimately, winning stuff's going to put money in your pockets more than you ever before. So you've got something to come from it as well. What I do want to say to the fan base, though, for me, ENICOut is not about protests or anything like that just yet. Okay, it's about backing Conte for me, and it's about adding pressure to get them to do what's right for this football club, for this beautiful football club that needs to keep driving forward.
So the vibe I get from Christian there is back Conte or fuck off. Steve, what is your message, maybe more to fans than the owners?
My message to fans, my message to fans is to don't take for granted what you have. There's a lot of fans that are really jealous of what you have, and the fans that are not jealous of what we have, we alluded to it at the very beginning of this podcast. It's really not that special what they're doing, what they're feeling. There's really not much of an emotional lift to winning a title with a Man City or a Chelsea. I'll take one title in the next 10 years with the way we're doing it. I would trade that or keep that, then trade it for 5 titles with a sports washing club easily, because all it takes is one. Once we get that one, we're already the most hated club out there, and we haven't won anything yet. Imagine what happens once we get one and we do it our way.
Yeah, how you win is as important as winning. Where I am with it is Daniel Levy obviously considers us as a big club, one of the biggest in the countries, and I think that was evidenced by all the bollocks with the Super League, trying to drag us into that competition, and the hiring of Jose and Conte, two of the biggest managers, as Stephen has mentioned as well. Also, the demand for a world record fee for the naming rights of the stadium, again, more evidence that he thinks we are giant. I just want him to start acting like it now. I get we're not the financial powerhouse of some other clubs, but we've got money. And it's time to not only spend it, but to build up a system that you mentioned there, Stephen, as well, and you're absolutely right. Transfers are a bit of a gamble. Sometimes they work, sometimes everything indicates that they're going to work, but they just don't, maybe in Ndombele style. But we need to set up a system that limits that, so that when we sign someone, they follow our sort of identity, and they help move the club forward, and sort of our sort of agreement with the manager. That makes sense. So time to start acting more. I'm not ENIC out necessarily. I'm just do a bit better, please. Just do a bit better. Let's keep pushing forward, because we have stagnated a little bit. Just before we wrap it up, it's Crystal Palace next, isn't it? Stephen, is there any sort of predictions you've got about that game? It's going to be a difficult one.
Right now,
it's hard to tell, isn't it?
I'll just be honest, and this is another conversation. It's a bit of a tangent. I'm just not confident in our manager right now, and I'm not as confident as everyone else is. I know that he's accomplished. I know that he's done some things in the past, and there's qualifications for them, like the titles he's won. He's bounced out of Europe super early. I want him to prove to us, with us, what he can achieve before we start kissing his feet. And it should have started earlier this year. It starts tomorrow. I'll be cheering for us, but I'll believe it when I see it with this guy.
I think you're talking there to two Italian Inter Milan fans, so we might have a slightly different perspective on Conte than you did, but that's absolutely fair enough. He showed us.
I understand what he's done. I just want to see it with us.
Yeah, no, he showed us last season as well, and the beginning of this one, that he can get a better song out of this team than we have shown over the last 6 or so games. So it's really difficult to call, and I don't think anyone's feeling too positive about it, are they, Chris?
No. Do you know what? I reckon we're going to win it 2-1.
I think 2-1.
Yeah, 2-1. I reckon Harry Kane will get one. And then, I heard today that he announced Kulu might be back.
They're assessing him today and tomorrow.
Yeah,
but
that'd
not
be
serious.
Trust me, Kulu will be back. So I reckon Kulu 1, Kane 1. Go 1-0 down as we usually do, but ultimately we got too much firepower.
Stephen, a score prediction?
I'll go 1-1 draw.
Appreciate that. As long as you didn't say a loss, I'll take it. I think we're gonna break the duck, and I think we're gonna win 2-0 and finally get a clean sheet. Probably with some Hugo Lloris madnesses, because that's what he does after he fucks up, then he comes back firing. So there we have it. We will leave it to you guys back home to make up your own minds about ENIC. Maybe they are the devil impersonate, like everyone seems to be suggesting online. Maybe we're just falling just a little bit short of where we'd like to be. But wherever you are, come on you Spurs, and let's go forward.
Give me a paddle, ENIC. Just give me a paddle.
So yeah, obviously, thanks very much for joining us, Stephen. Do you wanna give out your Twitter handle to the guys to see if they want to follow you?
Sure. It's not that interesting. I mostly came on here for me because I wanted to talk to people. But if you want to follow my Twitter, it's the number 7th floor crew. Crew is spelled Krewe. It's a New Orleans thing. It's complicated.
We'll tag you in the post with this podcast anyway.
Yeah, that's a challenge.
Yeah, I had one more just random question though.
Go for it.
About player chants, and specifically to Hugo Lloris, because there is a Spurs supporter club in Minneapolis, one of the favorite supporter clubs that I've encountered in America. But they have a song for him, and every Spurs fan abroad that I talk to, they say it doesn't exist. I wanted to sing it, and I wanted to
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay, so Hugo makes a big save. In this bar, one guy shouts out, "I don't want anybody else." And then the whole bar yells, "When I think of Hugo, I touch myself."
Yeah, no, that doesn't exist.
No. Have you got Sex Education on Netflix back home as well? Is that just on the English one? 'Cause I think that's the song that's where that song comes from.
It's on that series, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, the song for Hugo is really just Hugo. There's no real
we're
chat.
not the most inventive fans, or at least we haven't been to date. But I tell you what, keep singing it because that sounds awesome in the bars and the pubs back home. So keep it up. But yeah, thanks again for joining us. I hope you have better experiences in the next 10 years or so of watching Spurs. And yeah,
Keep in touch. Peace out.
Thank you all.